All right, so we're tackling Nietzsche today.
Yeah, one of the big names.
Big names, heavy hitters.
Definitely.
And, I was looking through the stuff that you sent over. I mean, I've read some Nietzsche before.
Okay.
But I don't know. I always feel like I need a guide
Right.
when I go into Nietzsche.
He's dense.
Yeah. And you've been over this new book, Beyond Good and Evil,
Yeah.
An Essential Study of Nietzsche's Philosophy by Alan Cavell.
Brand new.
It just came out this year.
This year, yeah.
2024 Cavell. And a couple other pieces by some other
folks, yeah.
Scholars and whatnot. So
yeah, it'll be fun to kind of
we're really going to get into it.
Get into the nitty-gritty.
The nitty-gritty of Nietzsche.
Yeah.
What do you where do we even begin with Nietzsche?
Well, I think what's always so fascinating about Nietzsche is that he's asking these questions that are still relevant for us today. Like, how do you live in a world where you create your own values?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's a
heavy,
big question, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of his most powerful ideas.
Yeah.
And so that's where, like, the figure of the Superman comes in.
Right, the Superman.
And maybe just as a quick note, we should say, full spoiler alert, this is not like the Superman.
With the cape.
With the cape and the tights and the phone booth.
Right.
It's much more about self-mastery.
Okay.
And this creation of the self.
Oh, okay. So it's not a literal Superman. It's more of a
concept.
Philosophical concept.
Right.
Exactly. Okay, so but even before we get to the Superman, I mean, we can't just gloss over the fact that one of the most well-known Nietzschean ideas is this death of God thing. And so I'm guessing from my limited knowledge of Nietzsche that he wasn't talking about like an actual like literal God dying.
No, it's not about a celestial lightning bolt or anything like that. It's really about
what is it about then?
Well, this radical idea that like what happens when we realize there is no ultimate external authority telling us what's right or wrong.
Oh.
Like that's
a big one.
A huge shift.
Yeah.
And so I think Cavell is really great at this because he emphasizes that Nietzsche isn't out to just destroy things.
Yeah.
He wants to clear space for what he calls a new valorization.
I see.
And that means, instead of us blindly accepting values that we've just inherited from whoever, we get to choose or even invent what matters most.
So we get to pick our own values.
Essentially.
That's what he's saying.
Okay.
That's the big.
All right. This is already making me feel a little
existential.
So you're saying that Nietzsche thinks we should just throw out?
It's not throw out.
Okay.
It's not so much that we throw out all traditional values.
Okay.
It's that
But we question them.
We question them. We see how they came to be.
Yeah.
What power dynamics are baked into them.
Yeah.
He was really into systems of thought.
Okay.
And how they work. So he starts by dissecting the ones that we take for granted, like religion, culture, morality, all these kind of big systems.
So less anarchy?
Less anarchy.
More analyzing anarchy.
More analyzing the systems that produce anarchy or whatever.
Yeah, or the things that we've just taken for granted.
Yeah, and seeing how those things came to be. Okay, I'm with you. So give me an example. How did he actually go about this dismantling process?
Okay, so let's take religion.
Okay,
specifically Christianity. This is where he introduces this idea of slave morality.
The slave morality. Now that's
and Cavell really dives into this, how Nietzsche saw this system with its emphasis on things like humility and suffering, turning the other cheek as almost like a psychological reaction to being powerless.
Wait, hold on a second. You're saying that being kind is a sign of weakness.
That's how he saw it.
That's a pretty hot take.
It's definitely controversial.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that he wasn't saying that all kindness is bad. It's more about
where it comes from.
Where it comes from. Like, where do those values come from?
So the source of the values as opposed to just accepting the values.
Exactly. And he would argue that true strength comes from creating your own values, not just accepting what's been handed down to you.
Interesting.
And just to be clear, he wasn't just picking on Christianity here. He saw this pattern in other systems too. Anywhere where the weak try to control the strong by making weakness itself seem good.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like a reversal?
It's like a reversal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's making me think about all sorts of things, like work relationships. You know, even how I was raised.
Right.
It's like all these unspoken rules. You just kind of
take for granted.
Accept. Yeah.
And maybe you shouldn't.
And maybe you shouldn't. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Okay. Yeah. So what's the alternative then?
Well, this is where things get really interesting.
Because this is where he brings in this idea of the will to power.
The will to power. Right. Yeah. That's a big one.
And this is where things get easily misunderstood.
I was about to raise an eyebrow.
Okay, so
because when you say will to power, I immediately think of like, you know, somebody who just wants to like dominate other people, you know, like just be a
dictator.
Yeah.
It's not about that.
Okay, good.
It's not about that at all.
Okay.
It's much more nuanced than that. And Cavell, I think, describes this beautifully.
Okay.
He says it's this like creative force. It's this fundamental drive in all living things to grow, to overcome obstacles, to shape the world around them. It can be expressed in all kinds of ways. Artistic creation, building a business, even just the sheer act of like striving to become a better version of yourself.
Okay, so it's more about like personal growth, self-improvement, like mastering your own life as opposed to other people.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I see the distinction. Yeah.
And this is so important because it completely reframes how we think about power. We're so used to thinking about power as this like zero-sum game. You know, I have power, you don't have power. He's pushing us to see it as something creative, life-affirming. Even joyful, you know? It's
okay. Now that's making me think about it a different way, right? So I'm starting to see how this will of power thing, could be more than just like a power grab, but it still feels a bit abstract.
Okay.
Can you give me like a concrete example of how this plays out?
Yeah, I mean, think about like an athlete,
okay,
right, who's pushing their limits to achieve peak performance, or an artist who's pouring their soul into a masterpiece. That's the will to power in action.
I see. It's like that drive to create, to overcome challenges, to express their own potential.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm getting it. Instead of letting the world dictate who you are, you're actively shaping your own life.
Yeah, you're catching on quick.
All right. All right. So that brings us to another one of Nietzsche's kind of wild ideas, which is the eternal return.
The eternal return.
Now, this one I've heard about. And it's basically this idea that you live your life over and over again forever.
Forever.
And honestly, the first time I heard that, I kind of freaked out.
It's a mind bender.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's a lot. So imagine everything, every joy, every heartbreak, you know, every bad haircut.
Every bad haircut.
Happening infinitely.
Infinite.
A lot.
But what's interesting is that Nietzsche uses this as like as this radical test.
A test. Okay. Right. Like imagine you had to relive it all. Would you embrace your life? Flaws and all? That's heavy.
It's a big question.
Yeah.
But it's a powerful one.
And I'm guessing that the Superman would be totally down with the eternal repeat button.
Right. He would embrace it. He would say yes.
He would say, bring it on.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
But maybe this is also a good place to say, you know, again, the Superman is not this literal superhero. He's
established that.
We've established that.
Yeah.
It's Nietzsche's ideal of what a human being can become when they fully embrace this philosophy.
Okay.
You know? So
no spandex required.
No spandex required.
Okay, good.
No phone booth.
So what does this Superman actually look like then?
Yeah. Well, this is one of the coolest things about Nietzsche. He intentionally leaves it open to interpretation. He doesn't give us a blueprint. He doesn't say, you know, this is what the Superman looks like. This is how you become the Superman.
Right.
The Superman is more like a direction you point yourself in.
Okay.
It's about recognizing the death of God, right? The absence of those absolute values. And then having the courage to create your own values, live by your own rules, become the author of your own.
Okay, so we're talking
hell on existential freedom here.
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to see why Nietzsche has such a reputation. This isn't just like philosophy. This is like a whole different way of being in the world.
You know, being in the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, just the tip of the iceberg. we haven't even.
We've got a lot more to cover.
We've got a lot more to cover.
Okay. All right. Well, we need to let our listeners process all this.
Take a breath.
Take a breath.
Yeah.
This is a lot.
It's a lot to chew on.
So we'll pick this back up in part 2.
Yeah. Join us for part 2, where we'll
really
explore these ideas in even more detail.
Yeah. Okay. So back into the world of Nietzsche.
Yeah. Back to Nietzsche.
Last time we left off talking about some pretty heavy stuff.
The
will to power, the death of God.
Yeah.
And my personal favorite.
What's that?
This idea of living your life on repeat.
Oh, yeah. The eternal return.
Like some kind of cosmic Groundhog Day.
Yeah, he definitely knew how to challenge our perspectives. For sure.
But before we spiral into an existential crisis, I want to revisit this idea of slave morality.
Slave morality.
We touched on it briefly last time, but to be honest, that phrase kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Okay.
Like it sounds almost judgmental.
Yeah, I hear you. The language can be jarring.
Yeah.
But it's crucial to understand what he was getting at. He wasn't trying to create like a hierarchy of people or say like these people are slaves and these people are masters. It's not about that. He was looking at systems of values and specifically how those values can reflect power dynamics.
So less about individual people, more about the systems themselves.
More about the systems, yeah, and how they operate.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, so think about it this way. Imagine a group of people who are consistently oppressed, denied power, denied agency. Over time, their values might shift to emphasize qualities that help them cope. Humility, patience, self-sacrifice. They might even start to see those qualities as inherently good and view strength or ambition or assertiveness as negative.
Those like they're internalizing.
They're internalizing their own oppression. Yeah. Making a virtue out of necessity.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Nietzsche's point is that this slave morality can then become ingrained in a society, even after the original power imbalances have shifted.
Oh, that's interesting.
It can become the dominant way of thinking about good and evil, right and wrong.
That's making me think about certain cultural norms around like gender roles. Like for centuries, women were expected to be submissive, nurturing, self-effacing. And those qualities were seen as feminine virtues.
Exactly.
Right. But what if those values were actually a result of their lack of power, not some inherent feminine essence?
That's a perfect example of what Nietzsche was getting at.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these kind of social conditionings can persist.
They can persist, yeah.
Long after.
Long after the historical context that created them has changed.
Yeah.
And this slave morality can actually stifle individual growth and creativity.
Okay, that's a pretty thought-provoking perspective. But it also feels a bit bleak. Like if we're all just products of these power dynamics, is there any hope for escaping them?
That's where the will to power comes in.
Okay, back to the will to power.
Right. Remember, it's not about brute force or domination. It's about self-mastery, about consciously choosing your own values and shaping your own life.
So it's like an antidote.
It's like an antidote.
To slave morality.
In a way, yeah. It's about reclaiming your agency, your power to create and express yourself in the world. It's about recognizing that you are not bound by the limitations of pre-existing value systems. You have the potential to transcend them.
That sounds pretty empowering.
It is empowering.
But it also feels like a huge responsibility. Like if there's no ultimate authority telling us what's right and wrong, how do we know we're making the right choices?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And Nietzsche wouldn't give you like a list of rules. He would say that the journey of creating your own values is an ongoing process. It requires self-awareness, critical thinking, a willingness to experiment.
So it's more about the journey than the destination.
Exactly. And that journey is where he finds so much meaning and even joy. It's about constantly pushing your boundaries, challenging yourself to grow and evolve.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. But I still have this nagging question. If everyone's out there creating their own values, wouldn't that lead to chaos? Don't we need some shared values to function as a society?
That's a common concern.
Yeah.
But remember, Nietzsche wasn't advocating for anarchy.
Right.
He wasn't saying, like, let's just get rid of all rules and everyone do whatever they want. He recognized the need for some form of social order. He wasn't a nihilist. So the question is,
how do you balance individual freedom?
How do you balance individual freedom with the need for rules and structure? And that's where things get really interesting, because he believed that a healthy society should allow space for exceptional individuals to flourish, even if they challenge the status quo.
So it's about finding a way for the supermen.
The supermen, the free spirits to coexist with
the rest of us.
The rest of us.
Yeah. So it's not me versus everyone else. It's about finding a way to create a society where individual growth and collective good are
intertwined.
Kind of intertwined.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And this is where I think his concept of the Superman becomes so important. It's not about individual egotism. It's about striving for something greater than yourself, about contributing to the betterment of humanity.
I'm starting to see how this all connects. But it's also a lot to unpack.
It is a lot to unpack.
So before we move on, can you just give me a quick recap of the key takeaways from this slave morality discussion?
Yeah. So we've explored how slave morality can arise from power dynamics, how it can stifle individuality, and how the will to power offers a way to reclaim our agency and choose our own values. And we've touched on the challenge of balancing individual freedom with the needs of a functioning society.
Got it.
So a lot to think about.
Yeah. It's amazing how these seemingly abstract ideas actually connect to real world issues.
They do. Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
Well, we've talked a lot about morality, but Nietzsche also had some pretty radical views on religion, specifically Christianity. And this is where things get even more controversial.
Oh, buckle up, folks.
Yeah.
We're about to enter the danger zone.
Oh, danger might be a bit strong.
Okay.
But it's definitely where his ideas tend to spark the most debate.
All right, I'm ready to hear it.
Okay.
What exactly did Nietzsche have against Christianity?
Well, remember that whole slave morality thing?
Right.
Well, he saw Christianity as the ultimate expression of that system of values.
So it's not that he hated Jesus or anything.
Not necessarily. He actually found Jesus to be a compelling figure in many ways, but he took issue with how Christianity as an institution evolved, how it became intertwined with power structures and how its values, in his view, ultimately weakened the human spirit.
Okay, I'm listening. Break it down for me.
Okay.
What exactly did he object to?
He saw its emphasis on humility, self-denial, compassion as promoting a kind of passivity, a turning away from the fullness of life. He felt it encouraged people to focus on an afterlife rather than embracing the power and potential of their earthly existence.
So it's not that he was opposed to being kind or compassionate.
Right.
It's just he saw it as part of a larger system that he found problematic.
Exactly.
Okay, so he's basically saying YOLO.
Yeah.
Embrace this life here and now.
That's a very simplified way to put it.
Okay.
But yeah, he definitely valued this life over some hypothetical afterlife. And he saw Christianity's focus on sin and redemption as a way of controlling people through guilt and fear.
So he's not just critiquing religious beliefs. He's also critiquing the power structures.
The power structures, yeah, that go along with organized religion.
That often go along, yeah.
Exactly. He was deeply suspicious of any system that claimed to have a monopoly on truth or morality. He believed that true freedom came from questioning everything, from thinking for yourself, from creating your own values.
Right. I'm starting to see why Nietzsche is considered such a radical thinker. He's not just tweaking the system. He's proposing
a whole new way.
Of understanding ourselves and the world.
And this is precisely why he's still so relevant today in a world that's constantly changing, where traditional values are being questioned and redefined. Nietzsche's call for individual empowerment and self-creation resonates more than ever.
I'm definitely feeling inspired to do some serious soul searching after all this.
That's the Nietzschean spirit.
Okay.
But before you embark on your existential quest, we have one more leg of our journey to complete. Join us for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore the implications of these ideas for our own lives and the future of humanity.
Okay, so we're in the final stretch here of our Nietzsche deep dive.
Yeah, the final part.
We've talked about power, morality, religion, even the idea of living your life on an infinite loop.
On repeat.
My brain is officially full.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But I'm also feeling kind of energized.
That's the Nietzsche effect.
Is it?
He can be challenging, even unsettling at times, but he also pushes us to think in new ways, to question our assumptions about ourselves and the world.
So as we wrap things up, can you give us like the TLDR? What's the biggest takeaway from all this Nietzschean wisdom?
It's tough to boil it down to just one thing, but I'd say the core message is this. Nietzsche wants us to become the artists of our own lives. He's not handing us a paint-by-numbers kit. He's giving us the raw materials, the ideas, the tools, and saying, go create something amazing.
Okay. I love that metaphor. But what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, it starts with recognizing that you have a choice. You're not just a product of your circumstances, your upbringing, even your genes. You have the power to choose your values, to shape your character, to create meaning in a world that often feels meaningless.
So it's like we're all walking around with these blank canvases and Nietzsche's saying, don't let anyone else paint your picture.
Exactly. And he's not giving us like a set of rules or a pre-approved style. He's saying experiment. Find your own voice, your own vision, your own way of expressing yourself in the world.
I'm sensing a but coming.
You're right. There is a but, and it's a big one. This kind of freedom can be terrifying if there's no ultimate authority, no cosmic rule book. How do we know we're making the right choices?
Yeah, that's the part where my anxiety starts to kick in. It's like, okay, freedom's great. But what if I screw up? What if my masterpiece turns out to be a finger painting disaster?
Well, here's where Nietzsche's perspective gets really interesting. Remember the eternal return? That idea of living your life over and over again forever. Well, he saw it as this powerful tool for decision making.
How so?
Imagine you had to relive every choice, every triumph, every failure for all eternity. Would you still make the same decisions? Would you still live your life the same way?
Whoa, that's a serious gut check.
It is.
it suddenly makes that to-do list seem a lot less important.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
The eternal return forces you to confront your choices with a whole new level of seriousness.
Right.
It's not about pleasing some external authority or following a set of rules. It's about creating a life that you can affirm, a life that you would willingly choose to live again and again, even with all its imperfections.
That's a high bar.
It's a high bar.
But it also feels incredibly liberating.
It is liberating.
Like if I'm the one choosing, if I'm the artist, then I get to take ownership of the whole process.
Right.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
The whole thing. That's the beauty of his philosophy. It's not about achieving some kind of perfect predefined state of being. It's about embracing the messy, chaotic, ever-changing nature of life. It's about becoming the author of your own story. Even if it has a few misspelled words and plot holes.
I'm starting to see how this all ties together. But one last thing. We've talked a lot about the individual, about self-creation and personal growth. Where does the rest of the world fit in? Does Nietzsche have anything to say about, like, community, our responsibility to others?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that's often debated among Nietzsche scholars. He can seem very focused on the individual, on that striving for self-mastery. But I think it's a mistake to read him as promoting pure egotism or isolation.
So there's more to it than just every man for himself.
There's more to it than that.
Yeah,
Remember his admiration for the ancient Greeks. He saw in them this incredible balance of individual excellence and civic responsibility. Their society celebrated individual achievement. But it also emphasized the importance of community, of contributing to something larger than yourself.
So it's not an either situation.
It's not either.
It's about finding a way to integrate.
Yeah.
Personal growth and contributing to the world around us.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And I think it's a really important point to emphasize. His philosophy isn't about shutting yourself off from the world. It's about engaging with it more fully, more consciously, more creatively.
All right, that's a message I can get behind. So if we're all aspiring artists, shaping our own lives and contributing to something larger than ourselves, what's the canvas? What's the medium?
That's the exciting part.
It
can be anything. It could be your work, your relationships, your creative pursuits, even just the way you choose to move through the world each day.
So it's not about fitting into some predefined role or achieving some external marker of success. It's about finding your own unique way to express your will to power.
Exactly.
To create something meaningful and beautiful with your life.
You nailed it. And that's why I find him so inspiring. He reminds us that we have so much more agency than we often realize. We're not just pawns in some predetermined game. We're the players. We have the power to shape the game itself.
That's a pretty powerful thought to end on. So to sum it all up, Nietzsche's basically saying, wake up, embrace your freedom, and go create something amazing with your life. No pressure, right?
No pressure at all. Just the weight of eternity on your shoulders. But seriously, I think that's the heart of his message. He's not giving us easy answers.
But he's giving us something much more valuable. A challenge, a provocation, an invitation to become the artists of our own lives.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to step back from the canvas and let our listeners contemplate their own masterpieces. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the wild world of Nietzsche.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
We'll see you next time for another adventure in ideas.